You'd think I would have recognized the storm coming when it arrived in a plain white envelope. But no. I assumed it was something harmless, a dorm room assignment, a parking pass, or maybe a student ID update. The kind of boring college mail that you leave out for your kid to open because it's theirs, and you're trying to be the relaxed, supportive parent, not the overly involved one. I didn't open it. I set it on the kitchen counter and called out, "Hey, Ruby, you got some mail." Ruby, my 17-year-old daughter, the miracle who worked herself raw for a full-ride scholarship, smiled back and came over. She'd earned it, all the grades, the recommendations, the endless nights studying under the soft hum of our old kitchen light. I was proud of her, more than words could hold. But when her eyes landed on that envelope, her smile faltered. It was thin, cheap paper, definitely not the kind that screams congratulations. More like a bill, or a notice about insurance, or maybe a mistake. Ruby picked it up silently, walked down the hall, and disappeared into her room. I went back to stirring dinner pasta, I think, but I'll never really remember. Because that was the moment I heard her voice, sharp and broken, call out, "Mom." It cracked like glass under weight. I turned off the stove and followed her voice down the hallway. Her door was ajar. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, clutching the letter so tight it looked like she might crush it. Her face was pale, eyes red, and when she handed me the paper, her hand shook. I read it once, then again. "We acknowledge your decision to decline the scholarship. Your award has been reassigned to the next qualifying candidate." I actually laughed, but not because it was funny. It was one of those disbelieving, breathless sounds that come when your brain can't process what it's seeing. I looked at her. "You didn't decline anything, right?" Ruby's head moved slowly side to side. "No," she whispered. "Why would I?" I believed her. Of course I did. She'd worked her entire life for this. She'd cried tears of joy when she got accepted, baked brownies for the admissions team, even framed her acceptance email. Declining it would be like setting fire to her future. I picked up my phone and dialed the number printed on the letter, the financial aid office. A long hold tune played, some endless violin loop that made my heart pound harder. Ruby sat beside me, eyes blank, fingers digging into her jeans. Finally, someone answered. "This is Megan, financial aid department. How can I assist you?" I didn't bother with small talk. My daughter just received a letter saying she declined her scholarship. That's a mistake. She never did that. Megan didn't sound surprised. "May I have her student ID number?" I gave it. Each click of her keyboard felt like a countdown. Then she said the words that would crack everything open. "We received a formal email from her registered address last week. The withdrawal has been processed and the scholarship awarded to another student." My throat went dry. "What? That's impossible." "What email?" "From her address," Megan said, "sent Monday night at 7:47 p.m. I turned to Ruby, whose face had gone white. "That's my email," she whispered. But I didn't send anything. My mind was spinning. I asked Megan to forward the email. "Of course," she said cheerfully. "We'll send it to the same address it came from." Perfect. They were sending a fraudulent message straight back to the hacked account. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced my voice calm. "Can I ask who got the scholarship?" "I'm sorry," Megan said. "We can't disclose that." We hung up. Ruby didn't cry. Not yet. She just stared at the wall. "I almost believed it," she murmured. "Thought it was real, but of course not. It was too good to be true." That sentence shattered me. Not because she was wrong, but because she said it like she'd expected this pain. Like she'd known the world wouldn't let her keep something so good. I hugged her and said, "We'll find a way." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure how. We'd barely survived on my part-time jobs for years. That scholarship wasn't a bonus, it was the plan. Without it, there was nothing. When the forwarded email arrived, my stomach dropped. The address matched hers. The tone was polite, professional, final. "Dear committee, I have decided to withdraw my acceptance due to personal reasons." It was signed with her name. Her full name. I wanted to believe it was a hack, a glitch. But my gut was already whispering something darker. Someone had done this on purpose. I paced the room, biting a bleeding cuticle, replaying everything in my head, searching for sense. There wasn't any, not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Whoever did this didn't just steal a scholarship. They stole my daughter's future, and I was going to find out who. I didn't want to believe what my gut was already saying. That this wasn't a random cyber glitch, it was personal. The email had come from Ruby's own account at the exact time she was supposed to be celebrating. Something about it itched at the back of my mind. The time, Monday night, 7:47 p.m. I replayed that evening over and over. What were we doing then? And then I remembered. It was the night of Ruby's graduation party. The same night, her cousin Chloe and my sister Vivian had come over, smiling, hugging, acting like the world was perfect. I didn't let myself think it yet, but a piece of me had already started connecting the dots. To understand what came next, you need to know about Vivian. She's my younger sister by 2 years. Growing up, that gap was just enough for comparison to ruin everything. Vivian was the golden child, pretty, charming, sensitive. I was the steady one, the fixer, the one who was supposed to know better. If I forgot to do a chore, I was lazy. If she forgot, she was tired. If she cried, she was delicate. If I cried, I was dramatic. I stopped fighting it. I learned to survive outside the bubble of favoritism. Then, as adults, we pretended it was behind us. We both had daughter Zuby and Chloe born months apart. For a while, it even felt like peace. Ruby and Chloe grew up like sisters. They shared everything: books, playlists, inside jokes. They were inseparable. And when they both applied for the same national full-ride scholarship, they even helped each other. Ruby stayed up late helping Chloe with essays, editing, formatting, believing in fairness like only good-hearted people do. They both knew it was a long shot. Tens of thousands of applicants, maybe 50 spots. Still, they dreamed together. When the results came, Ruby got in. I still remember her face when she saw the email. Pure shock, then joy. But she didn't jump or scream. The first thing she said was, "What about Chloe?" I told her, "Chloe will be okay. This is your time." A few days later, Chloe's result came in first in line if someone drops out. They said, "Ruby felt bad, too bad. Really? She didn't even want to celebrate properly. It just feels like gloating," she told me. But we insisted. A small party at our house. Vivian came with Chloe. They smiled, brought cake, acted proud. I thought we were healing old wounds that night. When Chloe hugged Ruby and said, "At least one of us made it," I took it as grace, not warning. Now, sitting beside Ruby as she checked her inbox again and again, I saw the forwarded message arrive. There it was, the withdrawal email, sent from Ruby's address at 7:48 p.m. the same night as the party. My heart skipped. Ruby blinked hard, whispering, "That's when Chloe borrowed my phone." I froze. "What do you mean?" She looked at me like she was seeing the moment play in real time. She said her phone died. She needed to call her boyfriend. I gave her mine. I could feel my pulse in my throat. How long did she have it? Maybe 10 minutes. That was it. 10 minutes, enough time to ruin everything. I didn't want Ruby to see my face in that moment because I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Rage, not anger rage. The kind that boils beneath calm, the kind that plans, Ruby said softly, "We'll never prove it." She was right. The email came from her account. There was no way to prove who typed it, unless I stood and went to the kitchen sink, washing my hands just to keep them busy, to stop them from shaking. That's when I remembered something. Our backyard security camera, motion activated, full audio. It covered the back porch right where Chloe had gone to make her call. I felt my chest tighten. "Ruby," I whispered, "we might have something." I opened the camera app on my phone, scrolled back. There she was, Chloe, walking onto the patio at 7:46 p.m., holding a phone. Not hers. Wrong case, wrong color. Definitely Ruby's. She stood there, typing, tapping, then made a short call. Laughed, said, "Yeah, I'll let you know," and walked back inside. Ruby's phone log confirmed ATN outgoing call to Chloe's boyfriend made right after the email was sent. She'd sent the fake withdrawal, then covered it with a real call to make it look normal. It wasn't just betrayal. It was planned, calculated. Ruby sat frozen as I showed her the footage. "It won't matter," she whispered. "They'll just say I let her use my phone." I nodded slowly. "You're right. That's exactly what they'll say." But I wasn't going to let it end there. Not this time. I'd been silent too long, in too many things. My daughter wasn't going to be the next casualty of someone else's favoritism. I opened my laptop and started typing. "What are you doing?" Ruby asked. "Filing a complaint with the university," I said. "And after that, a police report, impersonation, fraud, whatever it takes." She blinked, tears falling quietly. "Will it even help?" I looked her in the eyes. "It will hurt them." That night, after Ruby went to bed, I sat in the kitchen in silence, coffee growing cold, watching the spinning wheel on the scholarship portal. I whispered to myself, "We've done everything we could. Now it's up to them." But even as I said it, I was already planning what I'd do next. Because if the system didn't fix this, I would. And deep down, I already knew where I had to go first. Vivian's house. Morning came slow, heavy. Like the world itself didn't want to see what was about to happen. I barely slept. Ruby stayed in her room, eyes swollen, pretending to scroll her phone but really just staring at nothing. I told her to stay home. You don't need to be part of this, I said softly. She didn't argue, just nodded. I knew that kind of silence. It wasn't peace. It was heartbreak. By 9 a.m. I was in the car. Vivian's house was only 20 minutes away. But it felt longer every red light dragging time, just enough to make me think twice. Should I go in angry.com? Should I demand an apology or play it smart? Get a confession? But every time I pictured Ruby's face, her tears, her trembling hands clutching that letter I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. I wasn't going there for peace. I was going there for truth. Vivian opened the door in her robe, coffee in hand, hair perfect like always. Well, this is early, she said with a smirk. Everything okay? I smiled, tight. Can we talk? Her living room smelled like expensive candles and new furniture. Chloe was there too, curled on the couch with her phone, pretending not to notice me. But the flicker in her eyes said it all. She knew why I was there. I turned to Vivian. You know about Ruby's scholarship, right? She nodded, cautious. Of course. It was wonderful news. I repeated, she lost it. Someone sent an email from her account saying she declined. Vivian's brows knit together. Oh no, that's terrible. But how could that happen? I didn't blink. That's what I came to ask. Chloe shifted. Her phone screen dimmed, then went black. I could almost hear her heartbeat across the room. I took out my own phone, pulled up the video, and hit play. The footage rolled Chloe on the back porch, Ruby's phone in her hand, typing, pausing, smirking. Vivian froze mid-sit. When it ended, no one spoke. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Finally, Vivian said, that doesn't prove anything. Really? I shot back. It proves she had Ruby's phone. It proves she was outside when the email was sent. It proves she lied. Chloe stood up, eyes wet. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she blurted. I just wanted them to review it. I thought maybe they'd what? I cut her off. Replace Ruby with you. Her lip trembled. They did. I felt my knees weaken. She actually said it out loud. No denial. No excuse. Just a confession dripping with guilt and stupidity. Vivian finally moved, setting her mug down hard enough to spill coffee. Chloe, she hissed. I looked at Vivian, voice low but sharp. You knew? Her eyes widened. I didn't. You knew, I repeated. You let her do it? Or you found out and said nothing? Vivian's mask cracked. Do you have any idea how many times Ruby got everything? How many times Chloe came second? She worked just as hard, she stole it. I shouted. Your daughter didn't just take a spot. She destroyed my kid's future. Chloe sobbed quietly. Vivian just glared at me like she was the victim. You think you're better than us because Ruby's smarter? Because she got lucky? Life isn't fair, and you know it. I took a deep breath, shaking but steady. You're right. Life isn't fair, but actions have consequences. I walked toward the door, turned back once more, and said, you have 24 hours to fix it. Tell the scholarship board the truth. Send them the video. Or I will, and when I do, I'll send it to the local paper too. They love stories about academic fraud. Chloe's sobs grew louder. Vivian's face twisted into anger, but behind it Ty saw fear. I left without slamming the door. Calm, cold, focused. When I got home, Ruby looked up from the couch, eyes searching mine. Did you talk to them? Yes, I said, and they'll call the university by tomorrow.
Stop.
She hesitated. And if they don't, I smiled faintly. Then we make sure everyone else does. But deep down, I knew something bigger was coming. Because people like Vivian don't admit guilt, they fight back. And I had a feeling this war was only beginning. They didn't fix it. They didn't tell the board the truth, and they didn't send the video. Instead, Vivian did something I hadn't fully anticipated. She doubled down. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a flurry of calls and messages. The scholarship office wanted a meeting to clarify Ruby's file. Chloe's parents had posted vague sorrow-dripping comments about how family is complicated. And worst of all, my sister called me, voice brittle with theatrical hurt, accusing me of making a scene and dragging them into public humiliation. How could you involve the police? She demanded. Do you want to ruin two families? I listened, letting the words land like stones. When she said, you could have handled this privately, I heard, between the cracks, the admission I'd been waiting for. She valued her reputation more than my daughter's future. I told her calmly that withholding the truth was theft, and theft deserved to be answered for. She hissed that I was trying to destroy her daughter. The irony, suffocating and obscene, made my stomach twist. I hung up and felt a strange, cold clarity settle in. There were no negotiations left. Vivian had escalated the stakes by refusing the simplest remedy. She'd chosen silence, and silence was assent. That afternoon, the university called Ruby in for another meeting. Their PR guard was up. Once reassigned, scholarships are rarely reversible, Megan said again, the same clipped politeness as before. I pushed a copy of the footage across the table like a gauntlet. The advisor turned pale and excused herself to consult legal. For the first time, I watched people pivot from policy speak to human reaction. They couldn't ignore the camera, the timestamp, the phone logs. It was clean, ugly evidence. The scholarship board convened emergency sessions. They reviewed the code of conduct, the student honor clauses, the chain of custody for correspondence. Every time I thought the university would do the predictable thing, sweep it under committees and gentle apologies, their lawyers would find another clause that made my argument stick. I was exhausted. But for Ruby, the exhaustion was deeper. It had an edge of humiliation. Friends at school whispered. Teachers asked awkwardly in hallways. The world that had once seemed to invite her in now measured her by rumor like a stranger. Meanwhile, Vivian and her allies tried a different tack. Narrative control. They attempted to frame it as a misunderstanding, a teenager's misstep, an overreaction by a parent who refused to accept the messy reality of sibling rivalry. There were texts from distant relatives urging diplomacy. Think of the family. They wrote, "Don't burn bridges." I understood the words social currency exchanged for silence, but I had already burned the bridge where it mattered. Ruby's future wasn't a bridge to be bartered. It was a road being bulldozed by someone who decided she deserved what my daughter had earned. When the police took our statement, I tried to keep my tone clipped and factual. Fraud, impersonation, digital tampering terms, that sounded clinical next to Ruby's hollow gaze. The detective listened with a careful patience I'd come to appreciate. He asked for everything. The email headers, the forwarded mail, the camera footage, witness statements, phone records. When I handed over the evidence, the weight of it felt like currency proof that could purchase justice. If the system wanted to spend it, the investigation moved faster than I expected. Maybe because the university had embarrassed itself by misassigning funds, or maybe because someone had decided this would be a tidy example to show other students that rules matter. The press called local reporters sniffing for drama, but we declined interviews. This wasn't a spectacle. It was a wound. As the inquiries deepened, Vivian's confidence frayed. She began missing weekend brunches, leaving messages that sounded rehearsed and defensive. Chloe, on the other hand, became smaller and more hollow. Not the sly girl from the party, but a child bearing consequence. Eyes flitting when I made eye contact. People around them started asking questions that couldn't be shrugged away. That was when the cracks showed in earnest. One evening, Vivian stormed into my house, furious and frantic, slamming the front door like a puncture wound. "You've gone too far," she spat, breathing hard. "You should have let it go." I didn't flinch. "She stole from my child," I said. "I didn't let it go." She glared in a way that used to be familiar, the way older girls glared at younger siblings before they learned empathy, but this time it was uglier. Uglier because it was calculated. "You think you're perfect," she sneered. "You think you can just call the cops and ruin people?" "I think you should be accountable," I answered. "And if accountability ruins people who deserve to be held responsible, then that's not my fault." The trial of reputations began. Vivian tried to rally support by framing herself as wronged, painting Ruby and me as vindictive. But as evidence mounted chat logs where Vivian coached responses, bank transfers that indicated a hush money attempt, witnesses who remembered Vivian's flippant comments about Chloe deserving a chance, her story became harder to hold. The university reinstated an investigation into Chloe's conduct. The scholarship that had been reassigned was frozen pending review. And then, unexpectedly, an anonymous tip reached a small education-focused charity that had been tracking cases of academic fraud. They reached out privately and offered assistance if Ruby would accept it. We thought about the optics and other charities stepping in, but Ruby looked at me, eyes tired, and said, "If it gets me to campus, take it." I did. The organization covered part of her tuition, enough to secure her place for the first term, and offered mentoring that felt both generous and wary. All of this, police reports, university hearings, media murmurs, charity offers happened while the family we'd once shared dinners with turned colder. My parents refused to return calls. There were strained encounters at church where mouths formed practiced condolences that never reached the heart. At the heart of each exchange was the same unspoken thing. Did I overstep by dragging family names into public processes? Some neighbors said I was right. Others whispered that families should keep secrets, but secrets had stolen from my child. I made a choice then that felt less about right and wrong and more about oxygen Ruby needed to breathe. And the only way to clear the room was through sunlight, however harsh. Weeks later, a hearing convened at the university. Chloe was found responsible for academic misconduct. The board recommended expulsion and restitution. Vivian was suspended from volunteer positions at school, and when the local paper finally ran the story, faced community backlash that made her move her accounts to private and retreat from social circles that had once applauded her. I watched it all from the edges, thinking about how justice feels when it's slow and partial, like a wound that begins to close but still aches when it rains. Ruby's scholarship was never fully reinstated. Bureaucracies don't always make victims whole. But she had a seat in a lecture hall, ID card in hand, a backpack slung over one shoulder. And that was more than we'd had a month earlier. On the day she left for campus, she hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat like a tiny drum against my chest. "You saved me," she whispered into my hair. I wanted to say, "No, you saved yourself," but that would have been untrue. We'd both fought, we'd both held the line. In the aftermath, the family line was cut clean. No calls, no holiday dinners. My parents sent a card with a typed message about family complexities, which I left unopened. Some people called me ruthless, others called me a good mother. I stopped trying to tally judgments. What remained was simple. Ruby was alive to chase what she'd earned. That was enough for now.